Okay, so we went through modeling, lighting, textures, and animation. Now we're going to swoop back through modeling to learn a couple more complicated features. One of the things that you're going to find yourself doing is making replicated objects. And so here's a clean Blender window. I just opened up a new one. I'm going to get rid of the middle square. And I'm just going to add an object like let's add a cone. Okay, so let's say I'm working with this cone, but I don't want to just make one cone. I want to make a lot of cones. Um, if I were to want to duplicate this, I can do it in one of two ways. If the object is selected and I hit Shift D, it duplicates the object. Okay? And I can keep doing that to create duplicates of this object. Since I did Shift D, if I were to go into the object mode and edit it, each of the objects is a separate object. Okay, so for instance, I can do select A, I can do the B, I can grab these points, and I can make this a taller cone. Notice these cones don't change. Okay? It's important to realize, if we go back into the object mode, that this is cone, but this is now called cone 001, cone 002, cone 003, and so on. So they're looked at as separate objects by Blender. I could go and I could kind of cover these differently with textures, and I can change them independently. So if you had gone to the trouble though of making something and then you wanted to replicate it, now in this case I could have just kept on adding cones. But let's say I was replicating something a little bit more complicated. Shift D is helpful because it creates that kind of multiple objects. So, but there's another kind of duplicate too. So let me get rid of these. If instead of Shift D, I hit Alt D, okay, it also creates a duplicate. Okay. But because I've used Alt D, these objects are all still linked. So if I'm in the edit mode, and this time I do A, and I do B, notice how all of these corresponding vertices are selected. So if I do G here, and I grab it, okay, I'm changing all of the vertices in the same way. And that's because I duplicated these using Alt D instead of Shift D. If I want them to stay the same even after I've duplicated them, but I'm going to go back and modify certain things, then Alt D is the way to go. If I'm going to want to have them start the same but then modify them in different ways, Shift D is the way to go. So again, Shift D and Alt D are tools that you can use to modify or to duplicate something.